describes how the scholarship of phenomenology shaped the process of social innovation in the Rising Sun Project, which is a $12 million, 34,000 square foot comprehensive urban development project with 3 different kinds of affordable housing and interactive civic elements, which was completed in February 2015. We want to talk about how phenomenology infused the design process, the architectural design process, as a philosophical, political, and practical. Oh, okay. Is that better?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so a bit of context for our work. We've worked together for 25 years towards social justice goals at the Phoenix Society, a community-based nonprofit organization, and our work in the organization profoundly shaped us as scholar practitioners. Our particular story is rooted in the rich humus of our everyday lived interactions with citizens whose lives are marginalized by homelessness, trauma, declining mental health, addiction, criminal justice involvement, and poverty. Our research and action for social innovation for social justice has been directed toward creating spaces and opportunities for these citizens to flourish and find their way to full participation in the social, economic, political, and cultural life of the community. We started our work in a context where policymakers really set the terms of debate about what useful knowledge is to inform public policy. But policy knowledge was based on managerial approaches drawn from market logics, and they seem to erase the local lived experience of citizens, and they seem to individualize responsibility for social inequality. This kind of knowledge seemed to view complex community issues, such as increasing numbers of citizens becoming homeless, as largely private and singularly personal matters to be treated by remedial or therapeutic intervention. As an organization with a social justice mission, we took the position that citizens becoming homeless in large numbers in our city was a critical loss of citizenship capacity, resulting from complex, larger scale socioeconomic trends. Our scholarly work aspired to make knowledge generation for socially innovative action accountable to the values of social justice. In our research, we learned about a particular group of European researchers who were looking into voluntary sector-led initiatives in selected European cities that were affected by a failed market economy. And they developed a model called alternative models of local social innovation that made knowledge generation accountable to the values of social justice. And they actually created tangible measures to determine whether socially innovative programs, projects, products, and partnerships, whether they respond to human deprivation by improving the lives of marginalized citizens, whether they empower previously silenced or excluded social groups by creating new capabilities, and whether they work to transform exclusionary mechanisms into inclusionary strategies. Transformative phenomenological inquiry in action for social innovation informed our process of developing creative capacities of inquiry and learning in our organization across 4 scales associated with social innovation, and this is from Francis Wesley's work at the University of Waterloo. These scales were individual, group, organization, and institutional levels, and I'm going to ask Michael to talk about those institutional levels later. In their teaching about transformative phenomenology, David and Valerie integrated Husserl's phenomenological thinking and the social phenomenology of Alfred Schutz. Husserl's proposal was that what we recognize as features of the world are not things that just exist out there in the world waiting to be discovered, but they're actually constituted or grasped by our consciousness. Schutz's unique contribution in his social phenomenology was his premise that at birth we're thrown into a life world that's already interpreted for us. And we take this pre-interpreted world largely for granted. We're not usually mindful of our everyday experience. We tend to view our experiences as unfolding automatically. we're not usually mindful of how our lived experience is influenced by larger social, economic, or historical structures. So we took these concepts, such as Schutz's notion of typifications. He said that there were two ways that we began to know the life world. One was through our first-hand subjective experience, and the other was through second-hand constructs. And one of these second-hand constructs he called typifications, which you can think of as recipes or formulas that we gradually learn to use to make sense of our everyday world. How to catch the bus, how to be in a classroom, how to behave properly in a classroom. But typifications also exist in a context which is socially constructed too, a system of relevances which determine what knowledge is most useful for us in our life world. So we wanted to explore these concepts, and David and Valerie really modeled and encouraged cultivating a genuine curiosity in our inquiry about our embodied experience and noticing our ongoing process of experiencing, including how we were presently framing, conceptualizing, and evaluating it. This idea of embodied inquiry also accounted for the idea of researching ourselves, exploring the process of our own self-formation, our own self-construction, as well as our formulation of ideas about the world. So this became a living practice for us in our organization and strengthened a focus on our development as scholar practitioners and the process of becoming embodied in our research and accountable to the life worlds of the marginalized citizens we served. So we proceeded with a lot of experimentation working with hermeneutic phenomenological inquiry by taking our everyday lived realities in our practice setting as objects of curiosity. So we looked, for instance, at client intake forms, assessment forms, our routines, our policies and procedures. These were the structures or typifications that structured our everyday experiences. We began to look at these with curiosity and wonder to become more deeply conscious of how they were structuring a particular reality in our organization. These experiments presented us with opportunities to inquire into and appreciate our location, our positionality, and to critically engage with and challenge our views of ourselves as helpers, to consider how we were actively making sense of the citizens that we were attempting to help, to articulate what we thought and what we thought we knew about society, how it worked, and our place in it. Our inquiry uncovered high stakes in knowledge generation and how it structured our relations with the citizens we were trying to help. We came to critically appreciate that we as practitioners, alongside the citizens we assisted, are citizens situated in a world that is structured politically, economically, and socially in ways that inhibit all of us from realizing our full humanity and our contributions to the social, economic, cultural, and political life of the community. It was out of these phenomenological inquiries that we determined that we would use the term citizens to refer to the persons with whom we worked, rather than the distancing objectifications as the homeless, the mentally ill, or addicts. We did this as a purposely disruptive act to call attention to the recognition that citizens who become marginalized lose their social, economic, and political citizenship status. This idea comes from Daniel Shugorensky. And we took Shugorensky to mean that becoming marginalized means that citizens lose their capacity to participate in the social, economic, cultural, and political life of the community. Designing the Rising Sun Project in terms of socially inclusive spaces in the city then solidified its integral connection to building capacities, to the restoration and enactment of active citizenship. Secondly, we determined that the Rising Sun Project would be designed as spaces for individual and community well-being. And this term became our critical ontological mainstay, or the primary reality we strove toward in the Rising Sun Project. It was a future-oriented vision of how citizens might be placed first in considering how we could imagine spaces communities and cities that were socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable into the future. The scholarship of phenomenology also infused the design process of Rising Sun as a philosophical, political, and practical exercise. It involved a deep attunement to how embodied citizens in their environment interrelate experientially and the complexes of pattern and meaning that create a sense of dwelling. This was an essential consideration for us in designing a project in view of the lack of safety, the compounding losses of employment, home, emotional ties, the experiences of violence, displacement, isolation, discrimination, deprivation, alienation, and abiding loneliness that characterize citizens' endurance of prolonged homelessness. We worked with an architect to incorporate the lived meanings of these experiences in the design process and infused a relational flow in building design between the sense of home, safety, my personal world, in relation to place, the history of the city, its roads, parks, schools, and neighborhoods, to the outer spaces that communicated a sense of interconnectedness and hopefulness, and a vision of a future beyond Rising Sun's immediate and familiar spatial boundaries. This phenomenologically inspired design process occurred within and against prevailing traditions and assumptions about building designs for social housing projects that typically leave out connections with social, epistemological, and civic webs of participation. Residents identified hallways as meaningful spaces between their homes. They emerged as a specific design feature, as purposeful places of residents' connection with their neighbors, as civic spaces where they could give and receive support, exchange views, valuable information, and resources. They were designed in 10-foot widths with large windows at either end to allow in natural light, places for seating that opened onto views of the community outside the property's boundaries. During the building appraisal, however, no additional value was detected by professional appraisers who were unused to imagining hallways as significant civic spaces connecting residents with increasing sociopolitical and epistemological capability. An important socially innovative design strategy that emerged from this phenomenological sensibility was the Social Innovation Center on site, designed as a vibrant, interactive, inclusive incubation space where what had been perceived as individual troubles, homelessness, addiction, and so on, could now be transformed into community issues for public deliberation towards more socially just public policy. It proposes a more inclusive kind of social convening that promotes participatory and other kinds of inclusive research approaches to encourage a diverse and inclusive exchange of ideas. The community gardens included in the design of the project were also an example of reimagining and reinventing public spaces for diverse, inclusive encounters. They were also envisioned as a demonstration of how to build landscapes that can heal and empower communities. I want to talk a bit about now how phenomenological scholarship has infused our living practice. Over time, our deep engagement with phenomenological inquiry has influenced the expression of values and the culture of our work in our community-based organization at the 4 levels of change required for social innovation. At an individual level, our living practices involve actively building awareness of how the social, economic, and political world shapes our consciousness, our ideas of who we are, our place in the world, and the kind of world we're bringing into being. At a group level of change, we envision ourselves as a learning community where everyone is engaged in learning how to create conditions where individuals and communities flourish. We acknowledge and celebrate differences in the perspectives of others, and we're open to questioning our existing routines and policies. We actively invite voices that are often less heard and take time to deeply listen to each other and support each other to learn and grow. At an organizational level of change, we cultivated and worked to sustain a culture of inquiry, conscientiously inquiring into our positions and identities as people choosing to help others. We welcome and encourage energetic conversations about our practices across diverse perspectives, and challenge each other respectfully, always remaining mindful that safety is the key to promoting robust discussion. We practice and model an openness to learning, as well as an openness to process work, which inevitably emerges as we begin to reflect on how the lived experience of residents affects us and challenges our understandings of our own lives. We promote open discussions concerning our understandings of our work together and the decisions we are making as leaders. At institutional levels of change, it's widely accepted that the health and well-being of people is largely influenced by the social economic conditions in which they live. Our vision for a healthy community, therefore, sees individuals, communities, neighborhoods, governments, business, and other sectors devising strategies and goals together to realize the vision of a healthy community. Everyone can, and indeed everyone is needed to participate to create a healthy future. I just wanted to shout out to Phoenix residents and staff who are here today, to Old Hands and Alana, our elders, and wanted to gratefully acknowledge your participation in our learning, and to thank Phoenix residents specifically for teaching us. You're the most important teachers we've had in learning about how to design inclusive spaces.